Tekrar hoş geldiniz. Türkiye'de darbeler tarihi, demokrasinin yeniden...
I would like to welcome you all. Now the session, I would like to welcome you all to the second session called History of Coups, Rebuilding Democracy and Democratization Reforms in Turkey, and it will be chaired by President of METÜ Northern Cyprus Campus, and Akif Çağatay Kılıç will be with us from the Parliamentary Commission on Foreign Affairs and member of Presidential Security and Foreign Policy Council, Professor Burhanettin Duran, and the Deputy Chairman of the Presidential Board on Legal Politics, Mehmet Uçum. I would like to leave the floor to Professor Ömer Turan. Thank you very much. 61 years ago today, legitimate government was overturned, as Yavuz Donat said. Democracy, there was a knife on the back of the democracy, and the wound of the knife still exists. And I would like to commemorate our martyrs with mercy and respect. And I would like to commemorate the sufferers with respect. And of course, there are a couple of generations. The whole nation is the sufferer. And this is the important meeting. And by organizing this meeting, I would like to thank the Presidency's Directorate of Communication and take special attention to this subject. Actually, I would like to thank also Fahrettin Altun. In the first session, May 27 was discussed and elaborated, and it was a very lively discussion, and we kept our breath and we listened the memories and everything. And May 27, from how it is recognized, how it is seen from the other countries, we also saw the perspective from abroad. And in this session, more generally, we will talk about the history of coups and rebuilding democracy in Turkey, and democratization reforms in Turkey will be elaborated in this session. May 27 is the day and the starting day of the tradition of coups by the military, by the army. And Turkish Republic of Turkey is the continuation of the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, in the Republic of Turkey, what happened in the Republic of Turkey in the beginning, or in the beginning of Turkish Republic of later, in order to see the chronologic picture, when you look back, of course you need to look back, and within the framework of 27 May, we have there is another attack on 1913. And Colonel Enver, Ömer Naci, Talat Bey, under the leadership of those people, there is a group of soldier and civilian people say Edirne will be lost and Edirne will be given with this lying propaganda. They already attacked the Sublime Port and then the Prime Ministry as well, and they martyred Nazim Pasha, and they also forced Kamil Pasha, who was the Grand Vizier, to resign. The Grand Vizier Kamil Pasha, after he resigned, left Istanbul and he went to Cyprus, and in October, he died in Nicosia, in Cyprus, in the capital of Cyprus, and in Arab Ahmet Mosque. He died there, and then we would like to commemorate him with respect and mercy again. In our session, our first speaker, we have Akif Çağatay Kılıç. We will listen him. He is from the president of Presidential Security and Foreign Policies Council. For long years, he was a member of the parliament from Samsun province, and maybe he was the minister of youth and sports for the longest term, and he is the president of the Foreign Policies Council. Yes, please. Thank you very much. I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to all the participants, and I would like to thank the Presidency's Directorate of Communications for organizing this event and for inviting me. And as a matter of fact, as of the inception of the Republic of Turkey, there are some non-democratic events, and the Grand National Assembly is the place of the national will. Therefore, non-democratic interventions can be evaluated very well and can be openly discussed here. To provide such a platform, it is very valuable. I would like to thank them again. And in the previous session, I had the opportunity to listen, especially the connection with the other countries, and we also have some information from time to time. The relation between the Coup and the other countries is very important to tell, because when you look at the participants, you can recognize that we have the personal obligation, because I work in the parliament. I work as a member of parliament from Istanbul province, and I am the head of the Commission Foreign Policies Council. And now Turkey and the parliament is the direct target of the coup, and therefore the parliament in which the national will comes to the forefront is very significant. When you look back, when you look at the history, as you pay attention during the Ottoman Empire, during the time of Ottoman Empire, there were some traditions, or there were some behaviors, or there were some approaches who were actually tried for the first time. And after the republic was declared, on certain intervals, we saw that movements again. It's like a giant, and it's like underwater, and then it emerges again. You see its head on the water and looks around. When we look at our recent history in 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and then in 1997 and 27 April, and then July 15, 2006, luckily it didn't succeed with the support and with the unification of our state and the nation. But today we will talk about actually the coup and the communication means. Nowadays, the world is connected to each other. There is a close communication, and it has political implications, but it also leads to the dissemination of the wrong information, false information, and like the deliberate actually dissemination is also done, and an opinion, for example, can be disseminated to influence the outcomes of an election. Normally, maybe the impacts of the coups should be elaborated from this perspective. When we look at the Brexit, the leaving of the United Kingdom from the European Union, now especially it is known very well in the academic world, and in terms of Brexit, there was a referendum process, there was a voting process, and except for the United Kingdom, there was an intervention with electronic tools. It is not hidden anymore. And in Cambridge Analytica, under the leadership of Cambridge Analytica, there was an intervention. And even yesterday, it was reported, covered in the media in all the countries. Now we have the coronavirus pandemic, and we have the struggle against coronavirus pandemic from Turkey to Germany. And there were some people actually who came to Germany, Özlem Hanım and Uğur Şahin, the developers of the vaccine, and they ended up with the BioNTech vaccine. And in the social media, they try to say some bad things on the vaccine. Now, the interventions, of course, there was a military coup in Turkey in the past. We have such a tradition, such an history. We are experienced on it. Of course, we need to elaborate on it. But when we look at today, because we will talk about the future and in the upcoming period, and in the future, if non-democratic events and illegal events, interventions, if there are some interventions, such interventions, then not only the conventional tools will not be used, and the current communication tool is social media, and social media will be abused in this case, and the false information and the fake news will be disseminated to create a public opinion. So this is our perception, because when you look at the past, there were some propaganda about young people that were put in the grinding machine in 1960s, in 1980, in the e-memorandum. Press was used, and the press arm was used, and information was provided. But under the circumstances of that period, what you reach is television, radio, and television was, limited, but the press was very wide, very common. But today, apart from the visual, the printed press, newspapers or journals, and apart from these traditional tools, of course, there are some other tools, and you referred to me as the former Minister of Youth and Sports, and I was in contact with the youth very regularly. And when there was an information put in the website, if it is wrong or right, to identify whether it is wrong or right, and if it is wrong, then the effort should be exerted to correct it. So we had the chance to see how, to what extent it is affected. And believe me, if wrong information was put, if it was shared, it is very difficult to recover that information. We have foreign guests here, and it is difficult to actually. It is like opening up the Pandora box. When you open it up, it's not possible to close it down. So we see it even today. So how come the wrong information is disseminated and the perception operations are carried out? It is not only in Turkey, but we see it also in Europe and also in the United States. And again, in Turkey, the possibility of military coup in Turkey, it is a very weak possibility, very small one. After the July 15 coup, under the leadership of our president, there was a harsh struggle, and with all the institutions, the state actually was involved in that struggle. So this kind of an intervention will not be used from my perspective. But what I see is that we need to look at the powers behind that coup. They were using that instruments at that day, but they will be using some others in the future. And of course, what we understand by coup in tradition, they can resort to do some manipulations, and so we should be alerted on this perspective. And I believe that our universities and our academy assume huge responsibility, as well as our responsibility, especially in Europe. In the Parliamentary Assembly, we carry out some works, and we contact with foreign members of the Parliament and for different commissions in the other countries. And what we see is that everyone suffers from it. and everyone suffers from the information. The document is disseminated in a wrong way. Why do I elaborate on it too much? Because we are engaged in politics. That's why the coups target the national will, and where the national will is urging the parliament, the government, because when you seize those places, when you take government and the parliament, then you can reach your objective. And we should bear in mind that everywhere in the world, the parliaments are really assume responsibility and they work because they enact laws. And as the Turkish Parliament, there are elected people, elected representatives of the people, and they make law. And if there is a need for constitutional amendment, the first step goes through the Parliament. And recently there was a negotiation again. Drafting of a new constitution. I pay special attention to this subject because we don't have a civil constitution, because we have 1980 constitution. We made amendments in several points of that of the constitution. We try to end up with something. We try to make it more democratic, but from scratch, we need to prepare a civil constitution from scratch with all the details, and which can respond to challenges of the current time. And this is the expectation that this will be the most important turning point. As the presidential government system, and of course we have the coups in the period, and there are some underlying conditions. We have a constitution which is not civil, which is not embarrassed by all walks of life, and this, of course, is influential. And of course, there are some, the wrongdoings of those who implement the laws. But our objective and our goal actually is to create this infrastructure. And I would like to touch upon a couple of points. I cannot stay here too much because our General Assembly started, and this is the anniversary of May 27, and there are some international conventions, and I need to leave for that purpose. And especially for the future, what we need to pay special attention is that 27 May 2007 e-memorandum. This is how we refer to it, and I am a person who was engaged in that process. And some circles, our president was a prime minister at that time, and non-democratic attempts were made, and they actually against that attempt, we made a stance, and again, our president had actually defeated that attempt very clearly. But of course, when you look at what was behind, what was in front of it, we need to see a fact. Nowadays, of course, I look at from the political perspective. Now in Turkey, within the politics, there was opposition. There is and perception operation. So we saw them in the past as well. The prime ministers were referred to as dictators, and they were charged with being authoritarian. So I'd like to ask something to our audience. Illegal and non-democratic methods, when you struggle with those methods, when the regime was tried to be changed, and under the guise of democracy, some people are working, but why do they keep their silence? And when there was an e-memorandum on April 27, why there was a silence from the opposition. So I give an example from a recent time so that the young people can also understand. And there were some protests organized and provoking army to intervene. And there were some people, working in different places, under different positions. So, if you do not analyze it, if you do not work it with detail, and if we say that the government, if the political party at the government is responsible, this approach is not correct, and non-democratic attempts. There were some people who were trying to expect something from those movements, and we live it in the parliament as well. There are some false information, and the perception operation is established on that false information, and some illegal and non-democratic interventions were attempted, and as if their infrastructure is being made. There is such an perception. Of course, we all have this perception. I would like to ask you something. I am a member of parliament, and I know actually what kind of a management process with law and with regulation. Our responsibilities are very much clear, and in our country, we have the sensitivities of our country, sensitivities of our nation, and we have our stances. It is very clear when you put forward those stances. The coup attempt on the July 15, and if you regard it as a controlled or a theater, a controlled coup, if you try to find different names to a coup, can only be done by the people who have an aspiration for the coup itself, and they serve for the coup. And of course, all the politics deny it. And as the representatives of the nation, if they do not stand against these wrong positions, wrong stances, and if they stand next to this wrong approach, and if they voice it in the parliament, then it is, of course, it is important, and it is, unacceptable. And there is a preparation for the coup, and there is a preparation for the perception management, but this should be confronted, and this should be fought against, and this is the most important thing that we should struggle. And because the legitimacy is at the parliament, in which the members of the parliament are there, and national will is at the president himself. And within the parliament, of course, there is an opposition, there is a government, there is an ally in the parliament, but each MP elected is actually should comply with the democratic stance of the government. And we don't actually even remember some members of the parliament who were defending the MP number of 367. So, of course, it's our responsibility to move forward. And I would like to conclude my remarks. I apologize if I keep it very long. And with your permission, maybe I can listen a couple of more minutes. As I said before, the General Assembly works will be started. And I would like to thank all the participants for their contribution. And I would like to thank the Presidency's Directorate of Communication and Fahrettin Altun. I would like to thank him for this organization, and I wish for the success of this conference, and I would like to thank you for your patience. Thank you very much, Mr. Kılıç. And Turkish Parliament is a place where national will is represented, and Kılıç is an MP, and he is the president of the Foreign Relations Council. And He actually he talked about interventions to democracy on a global scale. He paid attention to those subjects. I would like to thank him once again. Our second speaker is Burhanettin Duran, and he completed his graduate degree in Boğaziçi and PhD in Bilkent, and he still works in İbn Haldun University. And he is the general coordinator of SETA, and he is also the member of Presidential Board on Legal Affairs, Turkish foreign policy, the Islamism, democracy in Europe, and non-government and civil society. He has made a great number of articles and books, and economic, social, and foreign policy costs of coups to Turkish people. He will make his presentation, and if he is ready, I will leave the floor to him.
Good afternoon. It is very important to speak about the coup of May 27, 1960. I would like to thank the Directorate of Communications and all those contributors for organizing this conference. From the Turkish political life's perspective, this was the first coup which had permanent effects in Turkey, and the harm cast by this coup to Turkey should be viewed from a multidimensional perspective in order to reinforce our awareness of democracy, and also those who are against democracy and who are working to eliminate democracy, and their efforts to this end can also be prevented by such awareness and with the inheritance that will leave to the future generations. So the coup of May 27th, we should pass the message that it was a coup that greatly harmed the Turkish democracy and should never be repeated again. And I think this conference and the ceremony at Yassada will contribute to this end. The coup of May 27, 1960, we said, was the first coup in the history of the Republic of Turkey. But there was this coup mentality that was inherited by the last periods of the Ottoman Empire. Abdulaziz was toppled previously. Then in 1913, there was the Babi Ali raid, and there were some other similar incidents which show us that this tradition of coups existed in the Ottoman era, even before the first coup in Turkey as well. But of course, this coup set a model, provided a model, and the subsequent coups in 1970s, 1980, they all took the coup of 1960 as a model in their minds. They examined that model. Although they devised new formulas, they took it as a model for themselves. And it had an impact for the coup plotters, of course, but on the other hand, it had an impact on those segments of the society which were threatened, intimidated by the coups. It had very negative effects. The execution of Adnan Menderes and his comrades, and the consequent situation and the unrightful attitude towards Democrat Party resulted in the founding of a new party, Justice Party. And they were convicted in the minds of our people. And with the negative impact of the coup of 1960, those countries who went through coups in the 1970s started becoming more civilian after 1980s, and they left the era of coups behind. But it didn't apply to Turkey. We had coups and coup attempts that happened even until 2010s. But so what happened and why did it take so long in Turkey? I mean, why did this continue this far? In Greece, in Portugal, the coup era ended, but in 1980, there was another coup in Turkey, and the February 28th process and the July 15th coup attempt, of course, these happened in Turkey. These result from the specific circumstances of Turkey itself. And from the intellectual perspective, there are some who advocate these coups and they formalize it in a way that they say it is supporting and protecting democracy. And there are many circles that are supporting it as well, the coups. And it is not nice from the political perspective, of course, for Turkey's political life. In this panel and in other panels, we see that the coup mentality is trying to revive itself over and over again, and we're trying to eradicate, eliminate that atmosphere that allows for this mentality to be revived, because the coup plotters and the civilians who are supporting it are trying to do this. Let me give you an example on this. During the air commander, his term, he said about the politicians that they always care about themselves and they never care about the country's interests. So if you have such a mentality, if this is what you think about the politicians, then of course you wouldn't have a mindset that would urge you to reach a consensus and reconciliate. So it is the tutelage mindset they think should be protecting democracy in Turkey, not the civilian politicians. And even some academicians have tried to rationalize it. They did this. I mean, they tried to rationalize it in Turkey. But of course, it is the politics itself which should solve its own problems, and then democracy will become well-founded. And the military coups and the supporters of military coups are both inside and outside the country, of course. And the order of coups, they try to normalize it through the constitutions they drafted, and they tried to give a legal assurance for the coups in the constitution that followed the May 27th coup, and it is one of the most negative consequences of that coup, and it prevailed after that coup as well. The accusations on Adnan Menderes and his comrades, I mean, they were very tragic. There were various cases which really were out of the context. They were charged with violating the constitution, although it wasn't a crime possible to be committed under the circumstances of the day, but it is more like an unfair persecution and a political execution that they suffered from, and that we understand. These new institutional and constitutional arrangements are shrinking, shrinking the political field, actually, and the politicians are always put under pressure. They are repressed, and the only way to resolve this problem is to institutionalize the institutions of the democracy and to enhance the civil society and the political arena that are against the coups. So maybe to sum up what I have said so far, I should reiterate that to prevent coups in Turkey from ever happening again, we should be really careful, because in 1960, 80, 1997, 2016, when we look at the coups and coup attempts, we always see the same pattern. And these are conflicts that are created, triggered within the society and within the politics. And there is this campaign that is not successful actually, and also there's a psychological warfare with the media, and the corporate institutional crisis is tried to be formed. Also the coup of 1725 to 5th of December were similar, and they constitute examples of this as well. And we have come to the point where we have a Turkey which is confronting the coups of the past. Of course, we commemorate the sufferings during the May 27th coup, but we also more assertively defend democracy. With the call of our president, people took to the streets on July 15th coup attempt, on the night of July 15th, and this way they also confronted the coups of the past in Turkey. And they gave a clear message that the coups will not be able to determine the fate of our country. In researches we have carried out regarding the coup of July 15th, we came to see that people took to the streets because they didn't want our President Erdogan to suffer the same fate as Adnan Menderes. This was what they wanted to prevent. And so we have this middle class which has become stronger. And from the perspective of the elites, we can say we have several different elites in Turkey, and although we have some elites that are non-political, there are these certain elites who think that the politics of Turkey should determine the country's fate, and they have more confidence in politics in this respect. And politics has become stronger, gained more strength during the AK Party era. Politics has become more valuable. There is a debate about political polarization in Turkey, and we see a discussion debate about a system in politics. But I believe these debates show the increase in the importance of politics for us. Of course, polarization is not nice to have considering the future of politics, but still I see the strong belief that people believe that problems can be solved through politics, and it is this belief that sometimes triggers such hot debates in the field of politics. And the political leadership of President Erdogan should be mentioned here. The strengthening of the civilian politics has also reinforced, strengthened the political parties, and the political parties now have to reach a consensus. And we may see an alliance of an alliance and a great opposition between two parties today. But if we can prevent further fragmentation in politics in the future, I believe that Turkey's politics will become stronger, and the party which wants to achieve 51% of the votes will have to consider the concerns and considerations of the other party as well. So looking from this perspective and considering all these aspects, the harms that the coup of May 27th brought to Turkey should certainly be remembered. And the deceased Adnan Menderes and his comrades, who should be considered as martyrs of democracy, their suffering should be told to the future generations, the new generations. And every year on 27th of May, similar events, ceremonies should be organized on Yassıada. From the foreign policy perspective, I should say that there is a common misunderstanding that the country will be stronger if the military takes it over. But we have seen after 1960 that their performance was weaker. After the 1980 coup, there was a very clear example of this. And during those times when the politicians were more effective, even it was coalitions, not single party rule, we saw that still they were more successful in the foreign policy field when compared to the military. So the civilian society, non-governmental organizations, politicians, military, they should all join forces to support our country. And it is an opportunity. We have an opportunity on May 27th to tell the future generations about the harms caused by the coups. And I would like to thank the Directorate of Communications and Professor Ömer Turan as well for their contributions. I would like to thank Mr. Burhanettin Duran for his presentation on behalf of all of you. And politics in democracy is possible through elected civilians. And bureaucrat is a bureaucrat, whether a military member or a civilian. And from the Ottoman era until today, and from the Janissary revolt until the current day, the military interventions or the attempts to make military interventions may appear to us as the military was always at the forefront, but they always had a civilian pillar. The cooperation between the civilians and the military has always existed, although the roles changed and the form changed. And coup is toppling of the government by force, and it is the takeover of the administration of a country by a certain group. And we have understood once again, and he underlined once again, Burhanettin Duran, that this is a culture of democracy. And the intervention should never be considered legitimate. I mean, as long as you have a culture of rejecting interventions to democracy and the ruling parties, then the democracy will become stronger and more operational. And the deficiencies in democracy will be covered over time. Now, I would like to thank once again Mr. Burhanettin Duran for his presentation and would like to leave the floor to our third speaker, who will be Mehmet Uçum. He will be speaking about democratization and legal reforms. He is chief advisor to the president right now, and he was the Kars deputy for AK Party in the past. And he is one of the founders of the presidential system of government. He is a lawmaker. He is a jurist, actually, graduated from Faculty of Law in Istanbul. And he worked in different positions, and he worked as an editor for different journals, magazines, and also authored some articles. And in this session, he will be speaking about democratization and legal reforms. The floor is yours.
Çok teşekkür ediyorum değerli hocam. Böyle bir günde uluslararası boyutu olan bu içerikli bir toplantının yapılması son derece isabetlidir. Bu konuda organizasyon yapan Cumhurbaşkanlığı İletişim Başkanlığı'na ben de teşekkür ediyorum. Diğer katılımcıların sunumlarını da dinledim. Onlardan da faydalandım. Kendilerine de teşekkür ediyorum. Şimdi 1960 darbesinin çeşitli özelliklerini ifade ederken tabii daha önceki konuşmacılarımızın söylediği gibi moderatör hocamızın da ifade ettiği gibi Cumhuriyet tarihi açısından bir darbeci geleneğin başlangıcı olabilir ama bizim siyasal tarihimiz açısından Osmanlı'nın son dönemlerinde de böyle bir darbeci geleneği çeşitli olaylarda görebilmekteyiz. Bu bir yana 1960 darbesinin önemli bir özelliği ve daha sonraki darbeler ve darbe girişimlerinde de önümüze çıkan önemli bir özellik şudur. 1960 darbesi sadece demokrasiye, siyasal sistemin işleyiş ilkesi olan halkın iradesiyle işlemesi gereken demokratik bir düzene karşı darbe değildir. 1960 darbesi aynı zamanda Cumhuriyete karşı da bir darbedir.
the coup is also
Neden
a coup
Cumhuriyete karşı
against
da bir
the
darbedir?
Republic. Why it
Çünkü
is
bildiğiniz
against
gibi
the Republic?
Cumhuriyet
Because as
devletin
you all
şeklidir
know, the
ve
Republic
devletin
is the
şeklini
shape,
belirleyen
is the
ilke
form
de
of the
egemenlik
state,
ilkesidir.
and the sovereignty
Cumhuriyetin
identifies
egemenlik
the form
ilkesi
of
de
the state.
hakimiyetin
And
millete ait olması ilkesidir.
actually the people
Gerek 1960 darbesi gerek sonraki
the
darbelerin
people
tamamı
are responsible for
Türkiye'de
selecting
demokrasi
the way
karşıtlığı
of
üzerinden
operation of
tartışılmıştır.
the
Ama
country.
bu darbelerin hepsi
However,
aynı zamanda
all
cumhuriyet
of these
karşıtlığıdır.
coups are against
Milli
the
egemenlik ilkesine
Republic.
dayanan
And
cumhuriyete
there is,
karşı
I mean,
olmasının
the
sonuçları
Republic
milli
rests on
egemenlik
the
ilkesinin
principle of national
parçalanması şeklinde
sovereignty.
bir sistem kurmalarıyla bağlantılıdır.
It is related
Hakikaten
to this
1960
issue.
darbesinden
And
sonra
after
1961
1960
Anayasasına
coup, and
bakıldığında
when you look at
egemenlik
1961
ilkesine ilişkin düzenleme
Constitution,
değiştirilmiştir.
the sovereignty
1921
article
Anayasası'nda
was amended in
ve 1924
1921
Anayasası'nda
Constitution and
egemenlik
24
kayıtsız şartsız
Constitution. The
milletindir hükmü
sovereignty
vardır.
rests only with the nation.
21 ve
There
24
was such an
Anayasası
expression.
milletin
And in 21 and
egemenlik
in 1924
iktidarının yanına
constitutions,
kurumsal yapılar koymamıştır. Yetkili
those
organlar tarif
institutions
etmemiştir.
did not
Oysa
identify
1961
the
Anayasası
competent authorities. That's
egemenlik
why
kayıtsız şartsız millete
1961
aittir dedikten
Constitution,
sonra
after saying that
egemenliğin
sovereignty rests
anayasada
solely with the
belirtilen yetkili
nation,
organlar eliyle kullanılabileceği şeklinde bir düzenleme
competent
koymuş.
actually
Bu düzenlemeyi
competent
aynı
organizations can
şekilde
use this
82
power.
Anayasası da
And
tekrar
in
etmiştir.
1982
Bu düzenlemenin konulması
Constitution we see
bilinçlidir.
this
Çünkü bu
amendment.
düzenlemenin amacı
I mean, this
milli
regulation
egemenliği
was done on purpose
sınırlamaktır.
because
Yani milli egemenlik
they tried
esas
to
itibariyle
limit
halkın
the
iradesiyle kullanılması
national
gerekir.
solidarity,
Seçimler
national
yoluyla,
actual sovereignty.
halk oylamaları
But
yoluyla,
it should be used
yeri
via
geldi halkın
elections
diğer inisiyatifleriyle kullanılması
with the
gereken
other
milli egemenlik
initiatives of
ilkesi,
the nation.
kurumsal
The principle
egemenlik
of
ve milli
national
egemenlik diye
sovereignty,
egemenlik ilkesi, milli egemenlik ve
actually
kurumsal
the
egemenlik diye
sovereignty is
ikiye
divided
bölünmüştür.
into two,
61
national
Anayasasıyla
and
bu
institutional sovereignty. And it
Şimdi
is done
Burhanettin
with
Hocam
the
sunumunda
1960
çok önemli
Constitution.
bir
And
teşhis yaptı.
Professor
Dedi
Burhanettin
ki
made an
darbeci
important
geleneğin
point.
dünya örneklerine
And the
baktığımızda
coup tradition,
örneğin
when we look at
Yunanistan,
the
örneğin
world, for
Portekiz,
example,
örneğin
the
İspanya,
Greece, Portugal,
buralarda
Spain,
öyle ya da
and those
böyle
countries,
bir noktadan sonra bu darbeci
after
gelenekler
a
tasfiye
certain
edilmiş.
point,
Siyasal
this
sistemin
coup
işleyişinde demokrasi
actually tradition
öyle ya
was
da böyle
eliminated.
egemen kılınmış.
And
Ama
the
Türkiye'de
democracy was
60 darbesinden
sovereign.
sonra
And after
darbeci gelenek
Turkey,
50 yıldan
after the
fazla
coup of
etkisini ve varlığını sürdürmüş.
1960,
Ve
this
bir tanesi
tradition
başarısız
actually
uğramış,
continued
5 tanesi başarılı
existence for
olmuş,
40,
açık
50, 40 or 50
darbeler
years.
yaşamıştır.
And there are
Yani
4,
devamlı
5
olan bir
coups,
darbe
and
dinamiği
you see the
Türkiye'de olmuştur.
dynamics
Peki bunun
of the
sebebi
coup
nedir?
which are
Tabii Türkiye'nin özelliklerinden
maintained.
kaynaklanan
Of course, what
Cumhuriyet'in
is the reason? There are
kuruluşundaki
some features of the Turkish Republic,
bürokratik irade,
and
ordu
there are some
iradesi,
bureaucratic
bunun
will and the
getirdiği
army
kadrocu
will,
yapılanmadan
and
kaynaklanan birçok sebep de
there are
bulunmaktadır.
some very
Ama
much
bunun asli
very
sebebi
many reasons, but the
Türkiye'deki
critical, the main
darbeci
reason
geleneği,
is that
60'la başlayan darbeci geleneği
the coup
hukuksal sistematik
tradition
içerisinde
started with
bir
1960 coup,
egemenlik
and
pozisyonu
within
oluşturmasıdır. Yani
within
60'tan sonra
the
61
legal,
Anayasası ile birlikte bizde
within the
2
legal
tane
structure,
egemenlik yapısı ortaya çıkmıştır.
we have
Biri
two
milli
forms of
egemenlik dediğimiz
sovereignty.
Cumhuriyet'in
One of
temel
them is
ilkesi,
national
öbürü kurumsal
sovereignty is
egemenlik
the
dediğimiz
principle of
vesayetçi
the
yapıdır.
republic, and
Bunun
the
kökü de
institutional sovereignty
1961
comes from the
Anayasası'dır.
tutelage
Darbeyi
regime, and it
yapanlar,
comes from 1961
biliyorsunuz
Constitution.
1960
And the
darbesi
coup plotters,
komitesi
you
zinciri
know,
içerisinde gerçekleşmemiştir.
1961
Darbeyi
was not
yapanlar
carried out by
Silahlı Kuvvetler
command
içerisindeki bir junta.
chain, and it
Bu
was
junta
only junta within the Turkish Armed
subay
Forces.
kademelerinde olan
And it
38 kişiden oluşmuş bir milli birlik komitesi kurmuştur hatırlarsınız.
I mean, you know,
Bu Milli
this
Birlik Komitesi
National Committee Union was
6
established
Ocak
by
1961
38
tarihine
people.
kadar yani 27
And
Mayıs'tan 1961 6 Ocak
until
tarihine kadar yani
6
Temsilciler
of
Meclisi
January
atanıncaya kadar Milli Birlik
1961,
Komitesi ile Temsilciler Meclisi
the
ortaklaşa
National
kurucu meclis
Unity
oluncaya kadar
Commission,
yasama görevi yerine
National Committee
getirmiştir.
Union,
Ve bu Milli Birlik Komitesi bu 38
undertaken
kişinin
the
kabul
actually
ettiği
the role
kanunlardan
for
birisi
the
Türk Silahlı
legislation,
Kuvvetleri'nin İç Hizmet
legislative
Kanunu.
role. And one of
Ve
them
bu
is
İç Hizmet Kanunu,
internal
211 sayılı
service
İç
law
Hizmet
of
Kanunu,
Turkish Armed
bu
Forces.
38 kişinin kabul ettiği bu kanun 4
And
Ocak
this
1961 tarihinde
law accepted
kabul
by
edilmiş.
38 people
10 Ocak
was
1961
accepted
tarihinde resmi gazete yerine
in
yürürlüğe girmiştir.
1961
Bir
and it was
35.
enacted.
maddesi vardır.
And there is an
1960
article
darbesini
number
yapanlar
35.
daha
And
sonra
the coup plotters of
bu
1960
kurumsal egemenliği
later on with this
hukuki bir sistematik
institutional
içerisine
sovereignty
oturtup daha sonra
they
yeri
put
geldiğinde
it in
kullanmak
a
için
legal framework.
bir sistem
And
kurmak,
then they
bir
established
yapı
another
kurmak için İç
system,
Hizmet
another
Kanunu'yla adım atmışlar.
organization, and they
Bu
made
35.
another
madde
law. And with the article
2013 yılında
35
değiştirilinceye kadar
was amended
şöyle bir düzenleme
in
içermektedir.
2013.
Silahlı kuvvetlerin
Turkish
vazifesi
Armed Forces,
Türk
the duty of
yurdunu
Turkish
ve
Armed
anayasa
Forces
ile
is to
tayin
protect
edilmiş olan
the
Türkiye
Turkish,
Cumhuriyeti'ni
the
kollamak ve
Turkish
korumaktır.
territory
Dikkat
and
edin,
the
hiçbir demokratik
constitution.
sistemde
And in
silahlı
none of the
kuvvetlerin
democratic society,
görevi
Turkish, the
iç
duty of Turkish
süreçlerle,
Armed Forces
iç sistem ve iç yapıyla
actually
ilgili
has
değil.
nothing to do with the
Silahlı
internal
kuvvetlerin
structures.
görevi
And the duty of
2013'teki
Turkish Armed
değişiklikle olduğu
Forces with
gibi
the amendment
yurt
of
dışından gelecek tehdit ve
2013
tehditlere karşı
is
Türk
to
vatanını
protect
savunmak,
Turkey
ayrıcılık
and the
sağlayacak
Turkish
şekilde
land
askeri gücün
against the
muhafazası,
threat outside and
Türkiye
to
Büyük Millet
keep the
Meclisi kararıyla
Turkish
yurt dışına
Armed
verilen
Forces
görevleri yapmak
and
şeklinde
to
düzenletilmiştir.
carry out the
Ama
work actually.
1961'den
But in
2013'e kadar
from
bu İç Hizmet Kanunu'nun
1961
35.
to
maddesi
2013,
Türkiye'de
the
darbeciliğin
article number
hukuksal temeli
35
ve meşruiyet
actually
nedeni olarak
created
gösterilmiştir.
an
Peki bununla
infrastructure for the
kalmış mıdır?
legitimacy
Hayır.
of the coup,
1961
but it was
Anayasası
not
egemenlik
sufficient.
maddesinde
And in
millet egemenliğinin yanı
1961
sıra
Constitution,
hakimiyetin
apart
kayıtsız
from
çarşı millete
the
ait
national
olması ilkesinin
sovereignty
yanı sıra
and apart
yetkili
from the
organları da
principle of
koyarak
sovereignty
bir
rests
takım
only
kurumsal
with the
yapılar
nation,
oluşturmuş.
they also put some
Örneğin
organizational structures.
1961 Anayasasına
For
Milli
example, in
Güvenlik Kurulu girmiştir.
1961, the Constitution we
Hatırlayın,
have the National Security
Cumhurbaşkanlığı
Board.
hükümet sistemi
And you know that in the
yürürlüğe girinceye
presidential
kadar,
government system
2018'de
until
devreye
it is
alınıncaya kadar
effective in
Türkiye'de Milli
2018
Güvenlik
in
Kurulu
Turkey, National Security
her ne
Board
kadar
was
tavsiye
there.
niteliğinde görüşler
And
olduğu
it
ifade edilse de
provided
Türkiye'nin iç siyasetini
opinions
belirleyen,
of
tehditlerini belirleyen, önceliklerini
advisory
belirleyen
opinions, but it
kurumsal egemenlik yapısı olmuştur.
it
Yani
was
milli egemenliğe ortak
an
olmuştur.
institutional sovereignty
Yine
that
1961
is
Anayasasıyla
actually
sıkı yönetim sisteme girmiştir. Yine
that
1961 Anayasasıyla askeri yargı sisteme girmiştir. Askeri yargıtay kurulmuştur. Yine 71
the
değişikliğiyle
martial law
Askeri Yüksek
strategy.
İdare Mahkemesi sisteme girmiştir.
And in
Bunların
1971
dışında
we had the military
yine,
high courts came into
Ulusal egemenlik
our
yapısı
agenda.
olabilecek şekilde kamu kurum niteliğindeki meslek teşekkürlerinden tutun 82 Anayasasıyla beraber gündeme
And
sisteme
together with
giren Yüksek
1982
Öğretim Kurumu'ndan tutun
constitutions
çeşitli
we
kurumsal
have
yapılar
have
sisteme
several
girmiştir.
institutional
Dikkat ederseniz
institutional
Türkiye'de
organizations like
darbeci
Higher
gelenek
Education Council
diğer
or different
örneklerden
public
farklı olarak
institutions.
hukuku
So different from the other coups,
darbe ortamının oluşturulması için, darbelere
to
meşruiyet
create
kazandırmak için
an environment,
çok önemli bir araç olarak
a
kullanmıştır.
positive environment
Yani
for the coup.
adeta Türkiye
This
bir
constitution
hukuk yoluyla darbeler tarihi yaşamıştır. Evet, bir güç kullanılmıştır, askeri güçle darbeler yapılmıştır. 60 darbesi dışındakiler de emir komuta zinciri daha öndedir. 71 ortasında da kısmen bozulmuş olsa bile. Ama nihayetinde bunlar hukuku kendi doktriner yaklaşımları üzerinden çok önemli bir araç olarak, çok önemli bir sistematik olarak kullanmıştır. O yüzden Türkiye'de darbelerden hemen sonra işte sivil iradeye yönetimi devretmek gibi yaklaşımlar öne çıkmıştır. Bu demokrasiye tam geçiş şeklinde değil, tam tersine demokratik iradeyi sınırlayacak, demokratik irade üzerinde nezaretçilik yapacak ve gerektiğinde müdahale edecek bir yapı kurulması güvencesiyle tercih edilen bir durum olmuş. Şimdi böyle bakıldığında 1961 darbesi sadece o döneme özgü, demokratik iradeye karşı yapılmış bir darbe değil, Türkiye'de Cumhuriyet'in kuruluşuyla birlikte temel ilke olan milli egemenlik ilkesinde parçalayan bir darbe olmuştur. Ve 2016-15 Temmuz'una kadar etkisini sürdürmüş iki egemenlik pozisyonun üretilmesine sebebiyet vermiştir. Biri milli egemenlik, halkın demokratik iradesiyle
The
seçimler
national
yoluyla kullanılan
sovereignty is
ve
used
seçilmiş
by the
irade
people
üzerinden
and to elect
süreç yönetimi yapan bir
to
egemenlik,
elect
öbürü
people.
ise
And
seçilmiş
on the
iradeyi
other
sınırlayan,
hand, there is
baskılayan,
another structure
gerektiğinde
which
müdahale eden
oppresses the
kurumsal egemenlik.
elected
Devamlı olan bu
real.
kurumsal egemenliğin
And
ürettiği bu faşizm
there is a
dünya
fascism
tarihinde
produced
görülmedik bir
by the
örneğe sahiptir
national
ve Türkiye örneği.
sovereignty, and there is no other
Bu
example in the other
kurumsal
countries.
egemenliğin
It's
ürettiği
only seen in
faşizm
Turkey. And the
hakikaten
fascism actually
Türkiye'de
developed by
gerçek
the
anlamda
institutional
demokrasi yaşanmasının önündeki
institutional
en büyük engel
sovereignty
olmuştur.
is the biggest
Nitekim böyle bir yapı
barrier
FETÖ'cü
for
bir
Turkey.
çetenin,
And this kind of a
faşist
structure
çetenin
is also
45 yıldan fazla böyle bir kapalı
is also
yapı,
used
böyle bir
by
kapalı
the
sistem 45 yıldan
FETÖ
fazla
terrorist
devlet içinde
organizations for more than
örgütlenmesine de
45
imkan
years, and
hazırlamıştır.
it allows that
Nihayetinde
structure to
1961
be
darbesi
organized in the
bizim
state.
son
And
60
1961
yıllık
coup actually
tarihimizde
in the past 60 years,
müthiş bir biçimde toplumsal, siyasal ve demokratikleşme süreçlerimize
social
zarar
democratic
vermiş
processes, it
uygulamalar,
harms our
kurallar
processes,
ve kurumlar
and it
ortaya
brought
çıkarmıştır.
implementations and
Bu
organizations that
açıdan
harm
bakıldığında
our
nasıl ki
practices.
darbeci
So
gelenek,
from this perspective, the coup
hukuku,
tradition
darbeci
actually
doktrinin ve darbeci geleneğin devamı için bir enstrüman olarak kullanmışsa,
used the
demokratikleşme
tool,
mücadelesi
used
de
the
hukuk üzerinden geçmiştir.
to
Dikkat
oppress
edilirse
the
hukuk
will, national will.
hakikaten
And if you pay
doğru bir
attention,
yaklaşımla
with the
demokratikleşmenin
correct
de
approach,
en büyük aracı haline
law is
dönüşebilir.
the biggest tool
Nitekim
for
Türkiye'nin demokratikleşme
democratization. And
mücadelesinde
democratization struggle
güç
of
savaşlarından
Turkey,
öte
you see the
hukuk
power
üzerinde,
actually
özellikle
war.
demokratik
And
sistemin imkanları üzerinde,
on the
özellikle
resources of
seçimler
democratic
üzerinde
regime, on elections,
müthiş
there
hamleler
is a
yapılmış. Halkımız bu hamleleri yapmayı
were made.
başarmıştır.
And our
Dolayısıyla
nation
Türkiye'de
actually
bir
succeeded
de
in
hukuk
those
yoluyla
moves.
demokrasi
And
denen
in
bir
Turkey, there is a
çizgi
concept,
gelişmiştir.
democracy
Yani bir yanda
via
hukuku
law.
enstrümanlaştıran
And
darbeci
the
gelenek için,
law is
darbecilere meşruiyet sağlamak için
and
kullanan
in
bir
order to
çizgi,
legitimize the law,
halk
the
iradesini
coup,
sınırlayan bir çizgi,
actually
vesayetçi bir çizgi,
there is
baskıcı
a
bir çizgi,
tutelage
öbür yandan hukuk
structure,
yoluyla
but on the other hand,
demokratikleşme
with
için
law,
mücadele eden
law
bir çizgi.
cannot be used
Bu
for
iki çizginin
democratization.
çatışması
So,
nihayetinde
conflict of these two
15
lines,
Temmuz'da
these two approaches,
açık
emerged
bir çatışmaya
actually
dönüşmüş. 15
turned
Temmuz'da
into an open
Türkiye
conflict on
ülke
July
lideri
15,
Cumhurbaşkanı
and
Erdoğan'ın
on July 15,
önderliğinde,
under
o
the
dönemin
leadership
başbakanı
of President
Binali Yıldırım'ın
Tayyip Erdoğan,
siyasi
and then at that time
liderliğinde
Binali
milli
Yıldırım was the prime
demokratik
minister,
halk devrimi
and then
yapmıştır.
and
Yani
the nation made
neden
a
böyle diyorum?
revolution.
Çünkü 15
Why
Temmuz
do I say this? Because
2016'da gerçekleşen
in July 15,
o büyük destansı
2006, there
demokrasi
was an
direnişi
epic democratic
artık darbe 61
struggle,
Anayasası'yla birlikte
and
kurulmuş darbeci
it
geleneğin
was against the
kurumsal
coup
egemenliğini
tradition
tasfiye
established
etmiştir.
with the
Siyasi olarak
1961
tasfiye etmiştir.
coup, and
Toplumsal
it
olarak
eliminated
tasfiye
that.
etmiştir.
It
Ve bunun hukuksal
eliminated
sonuçları
that
da hemen
understanding
15 Temmuz'dan
socially,
sonra
and the
gündeme
legal
gelmiş.
outcomes
Ordu
of
sivil
it
irade ilişkisi büyük
actually
ölçüde düzenlenmiş. Ordunun kapalı
came
yapısına ilişkin
right after
büyük
the
ölçüde
coup,
müdahalelerde bulunulmuş.
and there were
Ve en
interventions
nihayeti
in the army,
Cumhurbaşkanlığı hükümet
and at the
sistemiyle
end
de
the presidential
kurumsal
government
yapı
system
büyük
was
ölçüde
introduced, and this
tasfiye edilmiştir.
organizational
Kurumsal
structure
egemenlik yapısı
was
büyük
eliminated.
ölçüde
This
tasfiye edilmiştir.
institutional sovereignty structure
Ancak
was eliminated.
bu ikili
However,
egemenlik yapısının
this
tortuları
two
1982 Anayasası'nda var olan, yürürlükte olan
pillars
düzenlemelerinde halen daha
sovereignty
devam
structure
etmektedir.
is
Kalıntıları
still
halen daha
continues on
devam
the
etmektedir.
Constitution of
Bizim bu kurumsal
1982.
egemenliği, yani milli
And this
egemenliğe ortak olmuş, demokrasiye
national
karşı pozisyonda yapılanmış bu kurumsal egemenliği
organizational
tümden
sovereignty
tasfiye etmemizin yolu
should be eliminated,
yeni sivil demokratik bir anayasayı
and
kabul
we
etmemizden
need to
geçiyor.
have civil and
Dolayısıyla
democratic a new
demokratikleşme
constitution.
açısından ve hukuk
Therefore, in
reformu
terms of
açısından
democratization and in
çok büyük
terms
aşamalar kat
of
etmiş olmamıza rağmen,
reforms, legal reforms,
ciddi
we
bir
made
reform sürecine
huge
girmiş
steps,
olmamıza
we
rağmen
made huge
bu reform
progress, and
sürecini
we are in a
tamamlayacak
reform
ve
process.
daha
And we
ileri
need
seviyelere
to
taşıyacak
complete,
hedef
and we need to
artık
upgrade
yeni
the
sivil
reform process.
bir anayasa
But
olmak zorunda.
for that, we
Ve
need to have a
2023
new
sürecinde
civil constitution.
Sayın
And in the
Cumhurbaşkanı'nın
past, going 2023,
gündeme
our
getirdiği yeni
president
anayasa,
also raised a new
Cumhur
constitution
İttifakı'nın
on the agenda,
sahip çıktığı
and the
yeni anayasa
presidential
hedefi ve diğer partilerin
ally
her ne
actually
kadar sistem
raised
değişikliği
it
üzerinden de ele alsalar
raised
yeni
it on the
anayasa
agenda,
çalışmaları
and the work
Türkiye'nin
for the
yeni ve
new
sivil anayasa
constitution
ihtiyacının nedenli güçlü olduğunu ortaya koymaktadır. Eğer biz Cumhurbaşkanlığı hükümet sistemiyle beraber yeni anayasa, yeni sivil ve demokratik bir anayasa yaparsak darbeci geleneğin hukukla olan ilişkisini tümden tasfiye etmiş olacağız. Hatırlayın 2017-16 Nisan değişikliğinde bu konuda anayasadan kaynaklı birçok düzenleme ortadan kaldırılmıştır. Örneğin sıkı yönetim kaldırılmıştır. Örneğin Genelkurmay Başkanı'nın statüsü değiştirilmiştir. Örneğin askeri yargı kaldırılmıştır. Askeri yargı kaldırılmıştır. Askeri Yüksek İdare Mahkemesi kaldırılmıştır. Tabii bunlar çok önemli demokratik reformlar olmasına rağmen anayasa halen daha darbeci iklim açısından, darbeci zihniyet açısından bazı kural yaklaşımlar, bazı kurumsal pozisyonlar ve bazı felsefeler içermektedir. Bu nedenle eğer 2023 ile birlikte yeni ve sivil, demokratik bir anayasaya da kavuşursak bu darbeci gelenekle hukuk arasındaki ilişkiyi tümden ortadan kaldırmamız, tümden tasfiye etmemiz mümkün olacak. Artık hukukun darbecilerin elinde kirletilmesine izin vermeyeceğimiz, hakikaten Cumhuriyet'in milli egemenlik ilkesini tam olarak gerçekleştiği, egemenlikle ilgili düzenlemelerde yetkili organlar değil, halkın iradesiyle milli egemenliğin kullanıldığı bir siyasal sistemin kalıcı olarak hayata geçirmiş olacağız. Bu vesileyle bugün bu toplantıyı yapan arkadaşlarımıza, siz moderatör hocamıza, dinleyenlere teşekkür ediyorum. Ve bundan sonraki oturumdaki arkadaşlara da başarılar.
I would like to
Sağ olun.
wish for the success for the other speakers in this session. Thank you very much, Mr. Uchum. The coup plotters and their understandings to legitimize themselves, they created some organizations and they enacted some law and they tried to embed some implementations. And you showed them to us, and other speakers partly touch upon them, but you openly raised this issue and you have some recommendations how to avert it in order to prevent it. In recently, what has been done and what will be done in the upcoming period in the future. Thank you very much. And you see, you call it as a coup tradition. And of course, our nation sees it. Our national memory does not forget it. And since May 27, before it, even starting from the coup in the Ottoman period, the nation has seen it, and they also see it in the coup attempts on the July 15 because of the opportunities we have today. We have at that period, they could not resist at that time because of lacking opportunities, but it showed their will in the elections. As mentioned, Yavuz Donat, it showed this will in the protests and in different occasions, in different places. And now, via this kind of meetings, this is not the right way. We indicate that this is not the right way, and it will be understood much better in the future. And I think this meeting is very important and beneficial in this point. And in the first session, the 27 May was discussed, and the second session, before the May 27, after the 27 May, the situation was discussed, and I would like to thank all the participants with this understanding and with these thoughts. And I think in the third session we will see the coup tradition around the world, and we will draw some lessons. And I would like to thank once again the Directorate of Communications, and I would like to extend my best regards to all of you. We will have a very short movie, and we finished our second session, and we will have our third session, the democracy experience in the world, soon.